Welcome to the Holistic Therapy Interviews. Today I have with me Wonu Adepegba, all the way from Colchester, just down the road from me, and she's going to be talking about being an OT. So welcome, Wonu.
Hello there.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, just before I ask about your story and your background, I would just like to give our viewers a little bit of an overview. I'm Lucy and I'm a holistic flow coach, and I help others to reach their peak performance. Wonu is married and she's a mother, and at the age of 18, she decided to become an OT, which is an occupational therapist. So she went straight from sixth form college, and once she had finished her university degree and she got registered, she became a locum. So she worked in lots of different areas of being an OT because there is a huge spectrum. So she gained experience in mainly physical health. It was neuro-rehabilitation, elderly care, respiratory, which is breathing to you and I, surgery, and including vascular surgery. And that was what she enjoyed the very most. So I'm sure, Wonu, you're going to tell us more about that. And now Wonu specialises in long COVID and is a clinical specialist in that area. So I would love you to share more about your story with us and how it all got started for you, Wonu.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you for having me. I'll tell you a secret, but don't tell anybody, so you have to be quiet. So I originally wanted to be a physiotherapist. I'm embarrassed about saying that now because I'm so happy that I never got to be one. With all due respect to the physios.
Absolutely.
Because of the competitiveness, I then had to rethink my choices and my options. So as it would go, a friend of mine who had already started university told me about occupational therapy, that we work alongside physios, we study with them, this is what OTs do. And it really piqued my interest because I'd never seen myself as somebody working straight in an office. I knew I'd love to work with people. I had a bit of a caring heart. I wanted to make people be better. So the more she spoke about occupational therapy, I was like, yeah, this sounds more like me. I'm going to apply for that. Did the exams, and I actually got a place at University of Teesside in Middlesbrough up north. So I was there for 4 years. And the plan was to do a year of occupational therapy and then ask to switch into physio. But by the time I had done my first semester, second semester, I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I am seeing this through to the end. It was the best decision ever.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Going through the course, we learned lots of new theories, new concepts that I'd never even heard of, such as like social sciences, occupational science. We learned about how human beings operate in their environment and how the environment and things like the way they were brought up, their social activities impact a person in being able to do things for themselves. So a lot of people generally say, what is occupational therapy? I've never heard of that before. We're not just about getting you back into work. So occupational therapy is all about the things that we do. So the occupations that we perform on a day-to-day basis. So everything you wake up, from the moment you wake up, everything that you do, that you fill your day with, is an occupation. And when you have an illness or you're unwell physically, you have an accident and you break a bone, or for example, you have some issues with mental health and it stops you from being able to perform those occupations safely, independently, that's where we come in and help people be able to be more independent in their environment and to be able to get on with life and enjoy it, basically. So I'm a therapist of occupations. So I'm an occupational therapist. In a nutshell, that is what I do. Enable your independence at home.
I love that. I love that. That's clarity for our audience, because whenever I say OT, people are like, what? It's an OT, occupational therapist. Are like, oh, and there's this
or glaze over
that comes over their eyes. I'm like, they still don't know what I mean. So it's like, it's cooking, it's cleaning, it's moving things. It's just moving, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So fantastic. Okay, so tell us a bit more about your journey, because as an OT you can specialize in many different areas. And like I said at the beginning, you were a locum in lots of different areas. So you're very well averse to the different things and the different requirements that an occupational therapist would need in those different areas. So you're hugely experienced, because 15 years now in that career. And so tell us a bit more about that, Wonu.
Yes, so occupational therapists, they're usually called the jack of all trades because we can work in any capacity, in any type of setting. We can work in prisons, in schools, in mental health institutions. We can work in care homes. We can work in offices. We can work in law firms, everywhere. Everywhere people need to do things and they're being impaired, being able to do those things, we go in and we help. My pivotal moment where I knew which kind of field I was going to work in when I qualified was when I was in my elective placement. So it was in my third year during the summer, my 5-week placement, and I was doing older adults mental health. And for me, I found it very hard to engage some of the patients. And I was like, you know what, mental health is not really my thing. Although I'd picked all my optional models to be for mental health, my pivotal moment was when I did inpatient rehab. And honestly, it was amazing. Just being able to see the patients come in so debilitated, and you have a period of time to work with them, 6 weeks, to get them optimized for being safe at home. That was my turning point. I'm going into the physical field. And I'm kind of like a person who likes to think about, okay, so this is what's wrong. These are the problems. This is how we're going to address it. We do this, this, and this. We have a result at the end. Mental health for me was a little bit more, it could be this and it could be that. Let's try this and let's see about that. And for me, I like definite answers, and I like to say, okay, this is where we started, we did this, and then we implemented this, and this is where you're at now. You may need some further help and further support, but I know that I need to give you this, this, and this, and you need to do this, this, and this to help yourself. That's why for me, I was like, physical health is mainly my focus, and I would be going into that. And by the time I graduated, the job market was quite dry. You'd had more therapists qualifying than there were available jobs. And the area that I studied in, we had a lot of mature students. So a lot of them had families, couldn't relocate anywhere. And so they kind of snapped up all the jobs. And there's me as a young and single lady at the time. I knew that I had to be more fluid. So I moved back home to Oxford and started looking into the locum world after an auntie of mine said, why don't you go locum? She explained that it was a contractor, you're not a permanent member of staff, you've got more flexibility in where you go, you can have short contracts, you can have long contracts, but you're not tied to any one place. And so a door opened for me and I got into neuro rehab, and it was amazing. I was at the time, as a graduate, working with individuals with brain injuries. They had acquired brain injuries either through accidents, through having strokes, TIAs. There was particularly a case that really touched my heart. At the time, we were roughly a year apart at the time. And it was a young lad he was a high-flying, working individual. And just unfortunately for him, he was coming back from a party, like a nightclub, walking home, and he was attacked by a stranger with a screwdriver to the head. And the transformation of his life was heartbreaking. But being able to relate to him as somebody who was of a similar age, trying to give hope, going through the physical rehab with him was very touching. I remember his name up until now. It was very heartbreaking to see that just one thing just completely rewrote his story. And for me, that was why I knew that physical health was going to be where I'd be working. And from there on, I got different experience. I got a chance to move to London. I went into social services because I got a good balance of seeing what goes on in the hospital and then seeing what happens to people when they leave hospital and the provisions there. So when we hear in the news about government provision in the NHS and in social care, how it's so challenging, I got that insight to know what's actually going on in both worlds. And that was very, 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 very key in being able to give guidance and advice to those patients that I saw in the hospital, to give them a bit more reassurance. This is what's going to happen to you now. This is what the social worker wants to speak to you about. And you'll likely have this, this, and this support. So I felt a little bit more equipped when working in the hospital after I'd done a social services stint. So it was really great. And I guess from there, because I was so dedicated and I worked hard, I never saw myself as a temporary worker. I ingratiated myself with the teams. I genuinely worked in my contracts for quite a long time. They kept me on, and which gave me the opportunity to work in things like the respiratory wards, the cardiac wards, looking at elderly care, looking at inpatient rehab, general rehab, as opposed to neuro rehab. But I guess when the time came to start having children, I met a particular manager who became a friend, who is still a friend. And she was a bit like my guardian angel at work, actually. She saw that I was hardworking and said, look, what are you doing after you have your baby? We've got this position for you. We want you to come back and stay in our team because we know you can work quite independently and we'd love to have you back. So I said, okay, I'll keep in touch. And so lo and behold, I got back in touch after my maternity leave was coming to an end. And, I did the interviews and I got a position, and she said, we want you to work on our vascular wards doing amputees. So patients who have issues with diabetes that has gone out of control, who have peripheral vascular disease, other vascular issues, and who end up having amputations, or they will have a toe amputated, they would have a below knee amputation or an above knee amputation. We want you to work with them. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so frightened. I've never done this before. She's like, don't worry, you got lots of support. And I guess when I got there, I learned my trade from an assistant. She was amazing. And this kind of opened my eyes to be like, no matter what walk of life you walk in, you can never judge people because they could be the key to your next level. And so this assistant taught me everything she knew, and being able to implement that, being the qualified therapist, we were able to collaborate, and we enjoyed our tenure there. And so this same boss knew that, what are you still doing as a band 6, like a middle grade, you need to have the confidence, step up and go and be a team leader. My God, do you really think I could do it? She's like, yeah, you can do it. So
I'm going to stop you there. What is a band 6 for our listeners?
Okay, so a band 6 is, in the NHS, there is something called Agenda for Change, and it's basically how they grade every single worker in the NHS, regardless of if you're a nurse, if you're a therapist, if you are an assistant, or you're admin or clerical, or you're even in HR. So you get a banding. So it starts from band 2 and it goes all the way up to band 9. So band 9 is like from AA is management, band 9 is more corporate. So a band, you start when you graduate, you are automatically a band 5, and then you go to a band 6, which is like your senior level, and then you have the band 7, which is your team leader, and then your AA is the manager or the specialist. So when I was a band 6, I'd been a band 6 for about 6 years, and usually you should really only be there for about 3 years. Only because I was locum in, I was quite comfortable just getting the work done. She was like, no, you've got a lot of experience, go for it. So I listened to her, prepared for my interview, got the job, and was a band 7. And then guess what happened? COVID. Went into lockdown.
Which really brings us to where you are now, which is where you're specialising in long COVID. And so,
yes.
So very, very topical. So share a little bit more about that position you hold at the moment and how you help people in that position, Wonu.
Yeah, so it's a bit funny because without COVID ever happening, I wouldn't have this position. And so sometimes, in life where you feel like everything is a mess, but there was always an opportunity in that mess.
Yes.
And that is what we should try and look for and focus on. Things may be very difficult. Yeah. 2020 was a difficult year. I was pregnant in the pandemic, working, not knowing if I was going to ever make it out because I was pregnant and I had all these risk factors. Nobody knew that people were still going to be unwell after 12 weeks. And this is where the opportunity of long COVID came around. Now, a lot of you may have heard the word long COVID, may not necessarily know what it means, but it's when you have the symptoms of COVID and it's still persistent after 12 weeks of being infected. Okay, so you get over your acute phase of 1 to 4 weeks, but your symptoms of things like fatigue, shortness of breath, the brain fog, which is basically memory issues, struggling to find your words, those things still persist, lack of sleep, after 12 weeks and you're extremely fatigued, you crash, you can't really live your life, you're still on sick leave, then you kind of should be asking yourself, hang on a second here, I think I need to go see my GP. And this is what we advise everybody to do.
Right. Very good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you still are feeling unwell after 12 weeks, you likely may have long COVID. So this is where I specialize in at the moment. And when you go and see your GP and you say, I had COVID this particular time, I've still got it, this amount of time has passed. What your GP will do is run a load of tests for you just to make sure that something else is not the cause for it. So maybe like a cardiac or a heart condition or a respiratory issue that is masking itself as long COVID. So they'll do x-rays, bloods, tests, everything they need to do just to make sure they ruled out any other serious issues. Once they have been ruled out and the GP will say, we can't find anything wrong with you, it's likely that you have long COVID, which is where I come in as an OT. And so
then they come and see Wonu if they're very lucky.
Yes. Yeah. So the service I work in, you have to be referred in via your GP. Other services operate slightly differently. So it's very good to check with your GP how to get into your local long COVID service. So once they come in to us from the GP, we have a consultant who will also look at their results and make sure that he doesn't want to continue seeing them and just do some more testing himself. For those he feels are ready to go straight and have their intervention from the therapist, they will come to people like us as occupational therapists. And then we have a program in place. So what we do is we obviously do your initial assessment, and then we ask you, what are your symptoms? Try and get an understanding of what you're struggling with on a day-to-day basis. And usually the main three things that people struggle with, the main symptoms are, like I said, fatigue, brain fog, and shortness of breath or breathing pattern disorders. And so the physios and our team will look at the breathing pattern issues and more the physical aspects of their impairments. The OTs will look at fatigue and all the activities that they can and can't do. The psychologists will look at brain fog and low mood and anxiety, depression, because it comes hand in hand. They were once able to do X, Y, and Z, and now they're so debilitated they can't live that life. And they are grieving, they're mourning the loss of who they were before. And a lot of people have a lot of mental health issues as a result of that.
It's a huge struggle, isn't it? I have known somebody with that, and it just drags on and on and on, and you can't understand where it's going to end and how to get through it. So for our audience, knowing that is out there, that there's a service specifically for that, is fantastic, because I didn't know until I met you fairly recently that there was a specialist service for that. So that's brilliant.
It is. It's absolutely fantastic. And I think the government have done people a great service in setting up long COVID services all across the country, because a lot of patients, by the time they do reach our service, say, I didn't know what to do. I've been struggling for 6 months. I've been struggling for a year. I need help. I want to go back to my life again. And they just don't know what to do. Now, a lot of people that do come into our service, what we notice is that they are looking for that silver bullet. They're looking for the medication, the pill that will get them better in 4 weeks. And unfortunately, the nature of long COVID is that is not going to be the case, sadly. Some people are fortunate, and within 6 weeks, if they've come in with milder fatigue, they will start to resolve their symptoms as long as they implement our advice consistently. But there's some people their journey will take a lot longer. And there's some people, if they've had, for example, a pre-existing condition, COVID will exacerbate that and it will mask and make that particularly worse. So we are mindful. There's people who have complex issues, who have lots of comorbidities, meaning they've got lots of other medical issues going on at the same time. Long COVID is piggybacking on top of that and making their life a lot more worse, and their recovery journey a lot more complex. So us as OTs, we have to look at the patient in 3 aspects. We call it the biopsychosocial treatment approach. So we look at the biological aspects, psycho, so basically mindset and psychology, low mood, anxiety, depression, and the social aspects, where we come in as OTs, looking at the activities they do on a daily basis and which ones will tax on them, will demand a lot more energy to complete. So my job specifically is to deal with fatigue as an OT. we have a few principles that we tell people to do. I don't know if you've ever heard of the 3 Ps: planning, pacing, and prioritising. That will help. So that is like the basic starting point of getting on top of your symptoms. So planning, so you need to think about, what do I need to do for the day? What do I need to do for the week? Prioritising, so which activity, so bill paying, going to work, which takes more priority? If I don't do this, will I put myself into debt because I'm not paying my bills? I can't do my life admin. And then pacing yourself. So when you then go and do the activities, you need to make sure that you factor in rest. Now, rest is the key. Relaxation is the key, because a lot of our patients, they were high flyers, go-getters, and they just did not stop. And their body is telling them, you need to slow down. Now, what I say is, a lot of people, when they say, yeah, I relax, I chill, but you know what are they doing? Scrolling on the phone. So we say to them, look, relaxation and rest is not being on your phone. It's not watching TV, because all those things are cognitive tasks. Being able to sit and watch TV and understand, what the TV is telling you, what the program is saying. If you're watching a murder mystery, you got to use your brain. That's cognitively tasking. That will burn your energy faster.
This is so much that I talk about with flow as well.
Yes, I say, touch your head. You will find that if you did the heat map, your head is the hottest part of your body. Why? Your brain is burning through a lot of energy to keep you alive, to keep you active, to keep your emotions in check, to keep your heart beating. So when you're adding the extra stress of, you're reading a book, you're watching TV, you're distracted, there's loads of noise going on, that's going to burn a lot more energy, and you'll find that your fatigue is getting worse. So we try and get them to be aware of that aspect as well. So we teach them active resting, which is being in the quiet, still room. You can put relaxing music on, you can darken the room if you like, but you're literally being still and you're doing meditation, you're practicing wellness, deep breathing, all those things. That is what we call active resting. And we really encourage that, because that will help a lot. And so there's other complex things that, I go through with my patients. So I work out a strategy for them. I say, take the sheet of paper or online, fill in, tell me what you're doing on hour by hour. Are you sleeping? Are you resting? Are you busy doing, heavy energy tasking work? Are you doing moderately tasking work? Or are you crashing? Have you got to the point where it's like you're now in bed, you can't lift your head off the pillow? Tell me what you're doing after by hour. For about 3 days, I will then go back to them and say, this is what I'm spotting. Can you see any patterns? I can straight away tell if somebody is not sleeping properly. I can straight away tell if somebody is overdoing it. And there's a different type of kind of perform I get them to do, an activity diary, to say, what type of activities are you doing? Are you doing your shopping and then coming back to clean your house and then saying that you're crashing? Tell me. So then I can give them a clear picture. This is what I see going on. If you do not make changes, you will be on this journey for longer than you want to be. So you can either choose
really
now
to help themselves.
Yes, to make the choices to change, or they can not listen to me and struggle, or you can implement what I say and then you can be on your way. So at least I always say to them, look, my input is to get you to self-manage yourself, because that is essentially the focus of the NHS, is for you to self-manage. I always say to a person, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you to drop your work hours, because you need to consider if that's financially viable for you and your family. I can only guide you, but you need to essentially make the choices. So this is the way you need to go. And then the patient is the one that has to walk in it.
Absolutely. They have to take responsibility. Right. I would love you to think of, for the last question, the top 3 tips that you would give our listeners, especially if they have long COVID, or if they know somebody with long COVID and perhaps they haven't got to their doctor, they haven't seen anybody to clarify that that's what they've got. So as we were talking about being an OT, an occupational therapist covers many, many areas. So this is just what Wonu's been talking about in a nutshell. And you can, even if you feel like, if you're looking to be an OT, even if you feel like you want to go in one direction, try out lots of different areas to find out what your passion is, because it's so much more joyful when you are working to work in a place and do something that fills you with joy. Yes, you'll probably have ups and downs, but not all of that, oh, I've got to go back to work. but I've got to go back to work and I can help those people even more. So Wonu had that experience, right? The physical, not the mental. You were going to go into mental and it was, no, that's really not for me. I'm this kind of person. So understanding who you are as well. And if you feel like you might have COVID, we're going to come back to Wonu and she's going to give you 3 top tips.
Yes, so one of my 3 top tips is if you think you have COVID, get the help. We're, as a service, the service I work in, and nationally, a lot of awareness is trying to be raised about that there is help for you. Some GPs are not actually aware that that service actually exists, that they can actually refer their patients, yes, surprisingly. So get help. You're not alone.
Yes, and don't be afraid to ask for help. So that's number 1. What's number 2?
Yes, don't be afraid to ask for help. And also with the help thing as well, there are lots of Facebook groups that help people, that have a forum for people who are experiencing the same thing with long COVID. They may also have tips of how also they're getting through their symptoms as well. So it's good to be with kindred spirits. The second thing is I tell my patients, look, your mindset needs to change. We know that you have long COVID, but if you feel that, oh, I'm never going to recover, you've decided already that you're going to fail, then you're not going to succeed. You're going to fail. Your mindset, and I think, I always say in our service, we tackle the activity, the breathing pattern disorders, and then the psychology bit is last. But for me, I think the psychology and the mindset in should be priorities, should come first.
Yeah.
Because once you're in that frame of mind, you're geared up for like, okay, there is no silver bullet. There isn't medication that's going to get me better. It's going to be my concerted effort. Yes, things may not look the best now, and I'm not where I want to be, but I have an opportunity to set myself up to get somewhere better, to get better. Mindset is priority. The next thing I'm going to say in part of like the things I tell my patients is consistency and have patience. You can't say, I'm going to try what the OT says for 1 or 2 weeks, and if it doesn't work, that's it. I've failed. I'm going to give up. It hasn't worked. I'm not getting any better. The little efforts that you put in on a daily basis, you need to give this thing. If they tell you to do a strategy, you need to be consistent for about 6 weeks so that you can see any changes. If it doesn't work for you, you get to become the master of your own symptom management. So I'm going to change this. It didn't quite work for me. She's told me to do activity for 20 minutes and then rest, but I feel I can do a little bit longer and then rest a little bit more, and it will work this way. You get to start figuring out for yourself what works for you. Your consistent effort, those little things, changes that you make on a daily basis, will eventually swing that pendulum of recovery for you. So over a year, when you look back and you think, I was there a year ago, but now I'm here, I've made, there's actually been a change. So it takes patience and consistency. And also, in a nutshell, the other 3 things that you really need to look at to get yourself in a good stead, look at your sleep patterns. If you're not sleeping, you need to figure out a way to improve your sleep. There's loads of different apps you can look at. There's Sleepio.
Sleep. Got some great protocols. I've got a video on good sleep.
Yes. There's different apps you can use. You have to improve your diet and your gut health. If you need the energy, and fatigue is all about how much energy you have in your battery, and what you're doing to run down that battery over a short period of time or a longer period of time. If you don't fuel your body in the correct way with energy from our food, you are not going to last very long in that day or week. You will crash sooner than you think. So we always say you need to improve your diet. This is where the balanced diet and, eating in the correct way is absolutely key. I've even been through that experience. Although my fatigue was not because of long COVID, I was just burnt out. I wasn't sleeping very well. I wasn't eating very well, but I had to improve my diet. And that's probably where me and Lucy found each other, because I had to say to her, I just can't cope. And, she's given me solutions to rectify that. And I definitely have more energy. I'm structuring and learning to structure my day a little bit more, and to actually put in that work-life balance and to put in boundaries with work as well. So improving your diet is absolutely key. And the last thing I always say is understand what your baseline level of activity is. Now, what I say is your baseline level of activity, especially if you're dealing with fatigue, is what you can do on a good day, but is also what you can achieve quite comfortably on a bad day. So if you wake up and think, today's not going to be a good day, I'm not feeling very great today, I don't think I'll be able to do much today, you will still be able to do that thing comfortably on that day and not crash. And this is where the light bulb moment goes on for a lot of people, that they will find that their baseline level means taking a massive step back, a big step back into rushing around, getting things done. And it's generally half of what you can do when you're well.
Yeah.
But sometimes some people find that it's much, 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 much less.
Yeah. Very frustrating for people that are normally really active. Well, I think we got bonus couple of tips in there,
Yes, you
not
did, yeah.
4 or 5, which is fantastic. So do follow that advice, because it's fantastic advice. Wonu is an absolute specialist, and if you can make yourself feel better by doing those small things, taking those tiny steps, just as a small child would try and take steps to learn to walk, keep on doing it until you can walk again. Keep on doing it until you then can run again, and you can build yourself back up. So Wonu, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to speak to you and to hear all your knowledge and to hear your journey. And for our listeners, thank you. There will be another one coming up on screen, so another holistic therapy. So I will see you over there. Bye-bye for now. Take care.